The wagon lurched to a violent stop, and Gemma Kendrick felt her body slam against the wooden boards as her sister-in-law's shrill voice cut through the freezing December air like a knife through butter. "I cannot take this anymore, Richard. She is simply too heavy for the horses to manage in this terrain. We will never make it over the pass if we keep her with us." The year was 1878, and the small wagon train had been struggling through the mountains of Colorado for 3 days, trying to reach Cripple Creek before the winter storms made passage impossible. Gemma had known from the moment her brother married Constance Wilshire that the woman despised her, but she had never imagined it would come to this. Her brother Richard, who had once defended her against schoolyard bullies and shared his last piece of bread with her during the lean years after their parents died, now sat silent on the driver's seat while his wife of 8 months demanded they abandon his own sister in the wilderness. "Constance, please, let us discuss this reasonably," Richard finally said, but his voice carried none of the conviction Gemma remembered from their childhood. Marriage had changed him, or perhaps it had simply revealed who he truly was when forced to choose between blood and desire. "There is nothing to discuss," Constance snapped. "Look at the horses, they are exhausted. We have barely made 5 miles today and the snow is getting heavier. If we do not lighten our load, we will all perish out here. Your sister is a grown woman. She can make her own way to town. It cannot be more than 10 miles from here." Gemma pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders and tried to make herself smaller in the back of the wagon, surrounded by trunks and supplies. She had always been a larger woman, with curves that other girls in Philadelphia had envied before those same curves became something to mock once she passed a certain size. After their parents died of cholera 2 years ago, grief had driven her to find comfort in food, and her body had expanded accordingly. Richard had promised to take care of her, had sworn on their mother's grave that they would always stay together. But that was before Constance had entered his life with her delicate frame and her manipulative tears. 10 miles in this weather could kill her," Richard said weakly, but Gemma could hear the resignation already creeping into his tone. "And keeping her will kill all of us," Constance countered. "I did not leave Boston to die in these God-forsaken mountains because your sister cannot control her appetite. Make your choice, Richard, her or me." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Gemma held her breath, praying that her brother would remember the promises he had made, the bond they had shared through 23 years of life together. But when Richard finally spoke, his words shattered what remained of her heart. "Gemma, you need to get out." "Richard, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I have nowhere to go, no money, nothing but the clothes on my back. You heard Constance, it is not far to town. You can walk it, you are strong." He still would not turn around to look at her, keeping his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "In a blizzard. Richard, this is death. You know this is death." Tears were streaming down her face now, freezing on her cheeks in the bitter wind. Constance turned in her seat, her pretty face twisted with false sympathy. "Oh, do not be so dramatic. You will be fine. Perhaps this will even motivate you to finally do something about your condition. Think of it as an opportunity for improvement." The cruelty of those words, delivered with such casual viciousness, struck Gemma harder than any physical blow could have. She looked at her brother one last time, hoping to see some flicker of remorse, some sign that he might change his mind. But Richard sat frozen, a coward unwilling to meet her eyes. "Fine," Gemma said quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. "But know this, Richard, you are no longer my brother. Whatever love I had for you dies here in this moment." She climbed out of the wagon, her legs shaking from both cold and fear. The snow was already 6 inches deep, and the wind howled through the pine trees like wolves announcing a hunt. She had one small bag with a change of clothes and the silver locket that had belonged to their mother. Nothing else. Richard had not even offered her food or water. The wagon pulled away almost before her feet hit the ground, Constance clearly eager to put distance between them. Gemma watched it disappear around a bend in the trail, the sound of the wheels fading into the storm, and then she was alone. Completely, utterly alone in the Colorado wilderness, with night falling fast and the temperature dropping by the minute. She stood there for a moment, paralyzed by shock and disbelief. Part of her kept expecting the wagon to come back, for Richard to realize what he had done and return for her, apologizing and begging forgiveness. But the minutes passed, and the only sound was the wind and her own labored breathing as panic began to set in. Move, she told herself. If you stand here, you will freeze to death before morning. Walk, just walk. She began trudging through the snow in the direction the wagon had gone, though she knew she could never hope to catch up. The trail was barely visible now, the falling snow covering the wheel tracks almost as quickly as they were made. Her boots, which had been perfectly adequate for city life in Philadelphia, were thin-soled and offered little protection against the cold seeping up from the frozen ground. Within minutes, her feet were numb. The landscape around her was beautiful in a terrible way. Pine trees heavy with snow creating a hushed cathedral of white and green. But Gemma was too focused on survival to appreciate it. Each step required enormous effort, her skirts dragging through the drifts, her breathing coming in harsh gasps as the thin mountain air burned her lungs. She had no idea how far she had walked when she realized she could no longer see the trail. Everything looked the same, an endless expanse of white broken only by dark tree trunks. I am going to die out here, she thought, and the certainty of it almost made her laugh. After everything she had survived, the poverty of their childhood, the deaths of her parents, the endless criticism about her weight, this was how it would end. Frozen in the mountains because she was too heavy for a wagon. Her foot caught on something hidden beneath the snow and she fell hard, her hands plunging into the icy powder. She tried to push herself up, but her arms were shaking too badly. The cold was inside her now, making her thoughts slow and confused. Maybe if she just rested for a moment, she could gather her strength. Just a moment. Gemma lay down in the snow, curling into herself, and felt a strange warmth beginning to spread through her limbs. She knew this was dangerous, remembered reading something about how freezing to death felt warm at the end, but she could not seem to care anymore. At least it would be peaceful. At least the pain would stop. She closed her eyes. The sound of hoofbeats pulled her back from the edge of unconsciousness. At first, she thought she was dreaming, but then she heard a man's voice, low and urgent, speaking words she could not quite make out. Strong hands touched her shoulder, rolling her onto her back, and she forced her eyes open to see a face leaning over her, blurred by falling snow. Miss, can you hear me?" She tried to answer, but her lips would not move properly. The man said something else. Then she felt herself being lifted, cradled against a chest that radiated warmth like a furnace. She wanted to tell him to put her down, that she was too heavy, but darkness was pulling at her again. "Stay with me now," the man said, and his voice was kind in a way she had almost forgotten existed. "I have got you. You are safe. Safe." The word seemed foreign, impossible, but as consciousness slipped away, Gemma found herself believing it. She woke to firelight dancing across log walls and the most delicious warmth she had ever experienced. For a moment, she simply lay still, trying to understand where she was and how she had gotten there. She was in a bed, a real bed with blankets piled high, and she was wearing a nightshirt that definitely did not belong to her. The cabin was small but well built, A single room with a stone fireplace roaring against one wall, a rough table and chairs, shelves holding supplies, and the bed where she lay. "You are awake." The voice came from near the fire, and Gemma turned her head to see a man standing from a chair, setting aside a cup of what smelled like coffee. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of creek water in summer. His face was weathered by sun and wind in a way that suggested years of outdoor work, but he looked to be near her own age, perhaps 25 or 26. He wore simple clothes, denim trousers and a wool shirt, and moved with an easy grace as he approached the bed. "Where am I?" Gemma's voice came out as a croak, her throat raw and painful. "My cabin, about 3 miles from where I found you. My name is Amos Nichols. I was checking my trap line when I saw you lying in the snow." He kept a respectful distance, not approaching too close to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Cold, confused." She tried to sit up and gasped as pain shot through her feet and hands. "What happened?" "Frostbite, but not too severe, I think. Your feet and fingers will hurt for a while, but you should keep all of them. You were very close to freezing to death when I found you." He gestured to a chair by the bed. "May I sit? And perhaps you could tell me how you came to be alone in a blizzard." Gemma nodded, and as he settled into the chair, she noticed the concern in his expression was genuine. This man, this stranger, seemed more worried about her well-being than her own brother had been. The thought brought tears to her eyes, and suddenly the whole story was pouring out of her. The death of her parents, her brother's marriage, the terrible journey to Colorado, and finally the moment Richard and Constance had abandoned her in the snow. Amos listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "That is the cruelest thing I have heard in a long time," he finally said, his voice tight with anger. "To leave anyone out in that storm would be evil, but your own sister. That woman should be horsewhipped, and your brother along with her." "I was too heavy," Gemma said quietly, voicing the shame that had been eating at her. "The wagon could not manage with me in it." Amos looked at her sharply, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "That is horseshit, pardon my language. I have hauled supply wagons over that pass more times than I can count, fully loaded with goods and people. The problem was not your weight, it was their cruelty. They wanted an excuse to leave you behind, so they found one." The certainty in his voice, the complete absence of judgment, made something crack open inside Gemma's chest. She had been bracing herself for criticism, for confirmation that she was indeed the problem, but this man was offering her something entirely different: absolution. "You do not even know me," she whispered. "Why would you risk your life to save me?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Amos said simply. "And because no one deserves to die alone in the snow, no matter what size they are, what they look like, or where they come from. That is just basic human decency." Gemma felt fresh tears spilling down her cheeks, but these were different from the ones she had cried in the wagon. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of something she could not quite name but felt warming her from the inside out. "Thank you," she managed. "You saved my life." "Well, you are not out of danger yet," Amos said, his tone becoming more practical. "That storm is still raging outside, and it looks like it might last a few days. You are welcome to stay here as long as you need. I have plenty of supplies, and once the weather clears, I will take you into Cripple Creek. Do you have people there?" Gemma shook her head. "No one. Richard and Constance were all I had. They were planning to open a general store in town, but I suppose that does not concern me anymore." "What about money? Do you have any funds?" "Nothing. Everything I owned was in that wagon," Amos frowned, clearly thinking. "Well, we will figure something out. Cripple Creek is a mining town growing fast. There is always work for people willing to do it. Can you cook, sew, keep books? I can do all of those things, Gemma said. I ran our household after Mama died, and I helped Papa with his accounting before the cholera took him. Then you will be fine, Amos assured her. Might take some time to get established, but you will manage. You strike me as a survivor. His confidence in her, despite having known her for less than an hour, was both bewildering and deeply comforting. Gemma found herself studying him more closely, noting the kindness in his eyes, the careful way he maintained a respectful distance, the gentle tone he used when speaking to her. This was a good man, she realized. A truly good man, the kind she had begun to believe existed only in storybooks. "Why are you out here alone?" she asked, curious about this stranger who had become her savior. "Surely a cabin this well built, a trap line, all of this takes work. Are you a trapper?" "Among other things," Amos said. "I do some trapping in winter, prospecting in summer, and I hire out for odd jobs when I need extra cash. I have been in Colorado for about 4 years now, came out from Kansas after my father died. My mother passed when I was young, and Pa and I worked a farm together, but once he was gone, there was nothing holding me there. Figured I would try my luck out west. Do you like it? The solitude?" He considered the question. "Most of the time, yes. I like being my own master, not having to answer to anyone, making my own decisions. But it can get lonely, especially in winter when the snow keeps you trapped inside for days at a time. I go into town once a month or so for supplies and company, but mostly I keep to myself." "That sounds peaceful," Gemma said wistfully. "I cannot imagine what it must be like to not have someone constantly criticizing everything you do. Your sister-in-law sounds like a real piece of work. She is terrible, but I think I knew Richard had changed even before he married her. He became someone I did not recognize after Papa died. All he could talk about was making money, moving west, starting over somewhere new. I thought he wanted to take me with him because he loved me, but I think now he only agreed because he felt obligated." "Then he is a fool," Amos said firmly. "Obligation has nothing to do with real love. You protect the people you care about because not protecting them is unthinkable. You do not abandon them the moment it becomes inconvenient." His words struck a chord deep in Gemma's heart, and she found herself wishing she had known this man before, that she had understood such loyalty existed outside of fairy tales. Perhaps then she would not have accepted her brother's conditional love so readily. "You should rest," Amos said, standing. "Your body has been through a trauma and it needs time to heal. I will make us some dinner, nothing fancy, but it will be hot and filling." "Are you hungry?" Gemma realized she was starving, her stomach cramping with emptiness. She could not remember the last time she had eaten, perhaps yesterday morning before they broke camp. "Yes, very much so." "Good. That is a good sign." He moved to the fireplace and began pulling out pots and ingredients from a nearby shelf. "I hope you like venison stew." "I am no fancy cook, but I can make a decent stew." "It sounds wonderful," Gemma said honestly. She watched him work, noting the efficient way he moved around the small space, the practiced ease with which he prepared the food. There was something mesmerizing about watching someone completely comfortable in their own skin, confident in their capabilities without being arrogant about it. As the stew began to simmer, filling the cabin with rich, savory smells, Amos brought her a cup of hot tea. "Here, this will help warm you from the inside. It has some herbs in it that should ease the pain in your hands and feet." Gemma took the cup carefully, her fingers still clumsy and aching, and sipped. The tea was bitter but not unpleasant, and warmth spread through her chest immediately. "This is good. Where did you learn about herbs?" "An old Ute woman I met my first winter out here. I was sick with fever, probably would have died, but she found me and nursed me back to health. In return, I helped her gather wood and hunt for a season, and she taught me all sorts of things about surviving in the mountains. Plants for healing, tracking animals, reading weather signs. She probably taught me more useful knowledge in 3 months than I learned in 12 years of school. Is she still around? I would like to thank her someday for teaching you, since her knowledge likely saved my life too. Amos's expression grew sad. She died 2 years ago, just went to sleep one night and did not wake up. She was very old, probably near 80, and she always said she was ready to join her ancestors. I buried her in a place she loved, a meadow full of wildflowers that bloom every spring. I visit sometimes to leave tobacco like she taught me. I am sorry, Gemma said softly. She sounds like she was a remarkable person. She was. She once told me that the measure of a person is not in how much they have, but in how much they give. That has stuck with me. They fell into comfortable silence as Amos finished preparing dinner. Gemma found herself relaxing in a way she had not in months, maybe years. Despite the strangeness of the situation, despite being alone in a cabin with a man she had just met, she felt safe. There was something fundamentally trustworthy about Amos Nichols, something that made her believe he would never hurt her. When the stew was ready, Amos helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her back, and handed her a bowl and spoon. The first bite was heavenly, rich meat and vegetables in a thick broth that seemed to restore her from the inside out. She ate slowly, savoring each mouthful, aware that Amos was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she finally asked, self-conscious under his gaze. "Nothing bad," he assured her quickly. "I was just thinking how nice it is to cook for someone again. You appreciate it, really taste it. Most people just shovel food in without thinking about it. My mother taught me that eating is one of life's great pleasures and we should treat it with respect. She said every meal is a gift, especially the ones shared with people we care about." Gemma paused, realizing what she had said. "Not that I did not mean to presume. I know what you meant," Amos said gently, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And I agree with your mother. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. I miss her every day." "I miss mine too, even though it has been 20 years since she died. I was only 6, but I still remember her singing while she worked, the way she smelled like bread and lavender, how safe I felt when she held me." They talked late into the evening, sharing stories of their pasts, their families, their dreams for the future. Gemma learned that Amos had always wanted to have a ranch of his own, to raise horses and cattle, to build something lasting. He talked about the land with reverence, describing the way the aspens turned gold in autumn, and how the first snow transformed the mountains into something almost otherworldly. "You love it here," Gemma observed. "I can hear it in your voice." "I do," Amos admitted. "For all its hardships, Colorado feels like home in a way Kansas never did. Maybe it is the freedom, or the beauty, or just the sense that you can be whoever you want to be out here. The past does not matter as much. What matters is what you do now, who you choose to be." "I like that philosophy," Gemma said. "The chance to start over, to define yourself by your own terms rather than other people's expectations." "Exactly." Amos stood and began clearing away the dishes. "You should get some more rest. Tomorrow you will probably feel worse before you feel better. The frostbite will be painful as circulation returns. But I have medicine that will help." "Where will you sleep?" Gemma asked, suddenly aware that there was only one bed in the cabin. "I will make a pallet by the fire." "I have done it plenty of times. It is comfortable enough." "I cannot take your bed," Gemma protested. "You have already done so much. You are injured and recovering. You need the bed more than I do. Besides, I insist." His tone was firm but kind, leaving no room for argument. Gemma settled back into the pillows, feeling the exhaustion pulling at her. As Amos moved around the cabin, banking the fire and preparing his sleeping spot, she found herself watching him through heavy-lidded eyes. He moved with quiet competence, a man completely at ease in his solitude, yet opening his home without hesitation to a stranger in need. "Amos," she called softly as he was spreading out his blankets. "Yes, thank you, not just for saving my life, but for treating me like a person, like I matter." I had forgotten what that felt like. She saw him pause, his back to her, and when he turned around, his expression was fierce. "You do matter, Gemma. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. What your brother and his wife did to you was wrong, unforgivable, and it says everything about their character and nothing about your worth." The tears came again, but Gemma was too tired to be embarrassed. She simply let them fall, releasing months of accumulated pain and humiliation. Amos crossed to the bed and, after a moment's hesitation, took her hand in his. "You are going to be all right," he said quietly. "I know it does not feel like it now, but you are stronger than you know. You survived something that would have killed most people. That tells me you are meant for more than what you have had so far." "I want to believe that," Gemma whispered. "Then believe it, and I will remind you whenever you forget." He squeezed her hand gently, then released it and returned to his pallet. Within minutes, Gemma heard his breathing slow and deepen into sleep. She lay awake a while longer, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. Yesterday she had a brother, a destination, a plan for her future, even if it was one filled with Constance's cruelty and Richard's weakness. Today, she had nothing except the kindness of a stranger and the slim hope that maybe, just maybe, she could build something better from the ashes of her old life. She fell asleep thinking about creek water eyes and gentle hands, and for the first time in months, she did not have nightmares. The next 3 days passed in a blur of pain and gradual healing. Amos had been right about the frostbite. As circulation returned to Gemma's extremities, the pain was excruciating, like being stabbed with thousands of hot needles. He tended to her faithfully, applying salves and wrapping her hands and feet, bringing her food and tea, keeping the fire blazing to ward off the cold that still seeped through the cabin walls. The storm raged on outside, wind howling and snow falling so heavily they could not see more than a few feet beyond the windows. Amos assured her this was normal for December in the mountains, that they were perfectly safe as long as they stayed inside and kept warm. To pass the time, they talked. Gemma learned that Amos had been engaged once, back in Kansas, to a girl named Mary who had decided she wanted a shopkeeper, not a farmer. The breakup had been part of what drove him west, though he insisted he had gotten over it long ago. He loved reading, though books were scarce in the mountains, and could recite long passages of poetry from memory. His favorite was Walt Whitman, which surprised Gemma. She had expected something more classical. "Whitman understands the American spirit," Amos explained. "The wildness, the possibility, the way this country gets into your blood and changes you. Listen to this." He closed his eyes and recited, his voice taking on a rhythmic cadence. "I am large, I contain multitudes. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." "That is beautiful," Gemma said. "The idea that we are all connected, all valuable. That is exactly what drew me to his work." In a world that is constantly trying to divide people into categories, better or worse, deserving or undeserving, Whitman says we are all part of the same magnificent whole. Gemma shared her own love of Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters, confessing that she had spent much of her isolation reading novels and imagining herself as the heroine of her own romance. I know it is silly, escapist fantasy, but those books made me feel less alone. It is not silly at all, Amos said. Stories are how we make sense of the world, how we explore possibilities beyond our own experience. What did you love about those books? The idea that love could transform everything. That someone might see you for who you truly are, not what you look like or how much money you have, and choose you anyway. That connection could triumph over circumstance. She laughed self-consciously. I suppose I was naive to believe such things actually happen. I do not think you were naive. Hopeful, maybe, but hope is not a weakness. And I think those kinds of connections do exist. They are just rarer than books would have us believe. But rare does not mean impossible. The way he looked at her when he said it made Gemma's heart skip a beat. She told herself not to read too much into it, that he was simply a kind man being reassuring, but she could not quite convince herself. There was something in the air between them, a charge she had never felt before, possibility hovering just beyond reach. On the fourth day, the storm finally broke. Gemma woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through the windows, making the snow-covered landscape outside glitter like diamonds. Her feet and hands still ached, but the pain was manageable now, and she felt strong enough to get out of bed on her own. Amos was already up, boiling coffee and frying salt pork for breakfast. He turned when he heard her stirring and smiled. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Much better. I think I might even be able to walk a bit today." "Let us not push it too hard, but some movement would probably be good for you. We will take it slow." He handed her a plate of food and coffee. "I was thinking, once you are fully recovered, maybe another few days, I will take you into Cripple Creek. It is about a 5-hour ride from here on horseback. We will have to go slow because of the snow, but my horse can carry us both." The thought of leaving the cabin filled Gemma with an unexpected sense of loss. These past few days, despite the pain and fear, had been oddly peaceful. Here in this small space, cut off from the world by the storm, she had felt safe and valued in a way she never had before. Returning to civilization meant facing an uncertain future, finding work, making her own way in a rough mining town where she knew no one. It also meant leaving Amos. "Do you come to town often?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Once a month usually for supplies and mail. Why?" "I just wondered if I might see you again, after you dropped me off, I mean." She could feel her cheeks burning with embarrassment at her own boldness. Amos set down his coffee cup and looked at her steadily. "Gemma, I want to be honest with you about something. These past few days, getting to know you, have been some of the best I have had in a long time. You are smart, funny, kind, and I find myself not wanting to say goodbye. But I also do not want to presume anything or make you uncomfortable. You have been through a terrible ordeal, and the last thing you need is some mountain man complicating your life." Gemma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What if I want complications?" "Then I would say we should take things slowly, give you time to get settled and figure out what you want your life to look like. But I would very much like to court you properly, if you would be amenable to that. Visits in town, maybe dinners, walks when the weather permits. Getting to know each other outside of these unusual circumstances." "I would like that very much," Gemma said softly. "You are the first person in a long time who has made me feel like I might deserve good things." "You deserve everything good," Amos said fiercely. "And I intend to spend as much time as you will allow me proving that to you." They spent the rest of that day taking short walks around the cabin, Gemma's legs shaky at first, but growing stronger with each circuit. The world outside was transformed by snow, familiar shapes made strange and beautiful by their white coating. Amos pointed out animal tracks, teaching her to identify deer, rabbits, and the distinctive pattern of a mountain lion that had passed nearby in the night. Should we be worried about that? Gemma asked nervously, staring at the large paw prints. Not really. Mountain lions usually avoid humans, and this one was just passing through, probably hunting elk. As long as we stay alert and do not do anything stupid like approach its kill, we will be fine. His confidence was reassuring, and Gemma found herself trusting his judgment completely. He belonged to this wild place in a way she was only beginning to understand, reading the land like other people read books, seeing patterns and meanings invisible to her untrained eyes. That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Amos asked her about her dreams for the future. If you could do anything, be anything, what would you choose? Gemma thought about it carefully. I think I would like to open a restaurant. Not a fancy place, but somewhere warm and welcoming where people could come for good food and friendly conversation. Mama always said I had a gift for cooking, and I love feeding people, making them happy. Does that sound foolish? Not at all. It sounds wonderful. Cripple Creek could definitely use a place like that. Most of the establishments there are saloons serving rot-gut whiskey and barely edible food. A real restaurant with a woman's touch would do well, I think. I would need capital to start something like that, though. Money for rent, supplies, equipment. I have no idea how I would ever save enough. You could start smaller. Maybe hire yourself out as a cook to one of the boarding houses first, build up some savings and a reputation, or look for investors once people taste your food. Where there is a will, there is usually a way. His belief in her potential was intoxicating. Gemma had spent so long being told she was a burden, a problem to be solved, that hearing someone speak about her dreams as if they were not only possible but likely felt revolutionary. What about you? She asked. Your dream of a ranch, how close are you to making that happen? Closer than I was a few years ago, but still a ways off. I have been saving money, and I have my eye on a piece of land about 10 miles from town. Good water, decent grazing, protected valley. The owner wants $2,000 for it, and I have about $1,200 saved. Another year or two of hard work, and I should be able to make an offer. That is impressive. You have done that all on your own. I have. It is not much compared to the big cattle operations, but it would be mine, built with my own hands and sweat. That matters to me more than the size. I understand that, Gemma said. The things we create ourselves have more value than what is given to us. Exactly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to coals. Gemma felt a contentment settling over her that she had not experienced in years, a sense of being exactly where she was meant to be. It was strange to think that just a week ago she had been a different person with a different life, and now here she was, transformed by tragedy into someone new. Amos, she said quietly. Yes. I know this is unconventional and probably improper, but I need to tell you something. I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Amos turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the firelight. I know it is too soon, Gemma rushed on, afraid of his silence. I know we have only known each other a few days, and I am probably just confusing gratitude with affection, but I needed to be honest. You deserve honesty after everything you have done for me. Gemma, Amos said slowly, carefully, I do not think you are confusing anything. And I do not think it is too soon, not really. Sometimes you just know. I felt it the moment I pulled you from that snow, this overwhelming need not just to save your life but to be part of it. That probably sounds crazy. It sounds perfect, Gemma whispered. Amos crossed to where she sat and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. I am falling in love with you too. Maybe I already have fallen. And I want you to know that I see you, all of you, and I find you beautiful. Not despite anything, but because of everything you are. Tears were streaming down Gemma's face again, but these were tears of joy, pure and uncomplicated. "Kiss me," she said. "Please." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Gemma did not want to wait another second. Their lips met softly at first, tentative and exploratory. Then with increasing passion as months of loneliness and longing found release. Amos's hands came up to cradle her face, gentle and reverent, and Gemma felt something inside her chest crack open, spilling light into places that had been dark for far too long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Amos rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that since you woke up. I wish you had done it sooner," Gemma said, laughing through her tears. "I did not want to take advantage. You have been vulnerable, hurt. I needed you to be sure. I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." They spent the rest of the evening wrapped in each other's arms, talking and kissing and planning an impossible future that suddenly seemed inevitable. Amos described the ranch he would build, and Gemma added details about the house she would want. Large kitchen windows for light, a porch for watching sunsets, rooms for children someday. It was pure fantasy, spinning dreams from nothing, but it felt more real than anything Gemma had experienced in her previous life. When they finally fell asleep that night, still by the fire because neither wanted to be separated from the other, Gemma thought about how quickly life could change. A week ago, she had believed her future was set, a bitter existence at the margins of her brother's life, tolerated but never truly welcomed. Now she was here, in the arms of a man who loved her completely, imagining possibilities she had never dared hope for. Sometimes, she thought drowsily, the worst moments lead to the best ones. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were always meant to have. 2 days later, they set out for Cripple Creek. Gemma was nervous about riding, having never been on a horse before, but Amos's big bay gelding was patient and steady. He lifted her into the saddle with ease, his strength evident but never threatening, then swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to keep her secure. "Just relax and move with him," Amos instructed. "Duke knows these trails better than I do. He will take care of you." The ride was long and cold, but Gemma found herself enjoying it despite the discomfort. Pressed against Amos's chest, surrounded by his warmth, she felt protected and cherished. He pointed out landmarks along the way, telling her stories about the area, the history of the mining boom that had created Cripple Creek, the characters he had met in his years in Colorado. "It is a rough place," he warned as they descended the final pass toward town. "Lots of miners, gamblers, prostitutes, and opportunists. But there are good people too, families trying to make honest livings, business owners who care about building something lasting. You just have to be careful who you trust." "I trust you," Gemma said simply. "And I will not let that trust be misplaced." Cripple Creek sprawled across a valley, a jumble of wooden buildings in various states of construction and decay. The main street was a muddy thoroughfare lined with saloons, supply stores, a bank, a hotel, and various other establishments. Even in winter, the town bustled with activity, men moving between buildings, wagons hauling ore from nearby mines, the constant noise of progress and commerce. Amos guided Duke to a boarding house at the quieter end of town, a 2-story building with a neatly painted sign reading Murphy's Rooms and Meals. He helped Gemma down from the horse, and they stood together for a moment, neither quite ready to walk through that door and begin the next phase of their lives. "I will come back next week," Amos promised. "And I will write, I promise. I am not much of a letter writer, but I will do my best." "I will hold you to that," Gemma said, trying to smile despite the ache in her chest at the thought of being separated from him. "And Gemma, you are going to be amazing. This town will not know what hit it." She kissed him then, not caring who might see, pouring all her gratitude and love and hope into that kiss. When they broke apart, Amos was grinning like a fool, and Gemma suspected she looked the same. "Go on," he urged gently. "The sooner you get started, the sooner we can start building our future." Gemma squared her shoulders, picked up her small bag, and walked into Murphy's boarding house with her head held high. The woman behind the desk was round and friendly-looking, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and laugh lines around her eyes. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked. "I hope so. My name is Gemma Kendrick, and I am looking for a room and possibly employment. I am an excellent,